My last question involves term limits. Do you favor repealing the current 8-year term limit placed on the state legislature? Why or why not? Mr. Perry.
I don't know. You hear both sides of the story. I as a father and a businessman, can't imagine spending more than 8 years up there, but we'll see. I have had people talk about that they have a lot, they've accomplished a lot, and they've starting to get things going, and that the bureaucrats, as you get new people in who are, especially if they don't have a lot of experience, can be swayed, and that's our fear, is who's going to do the swaying. And so I would not be in favor of overturning term limits now. I think that the 8 years is adequate and right. Once I investigate it more, maybe it's too much, and maybe it should be a couple of years longer. I don't know, but I'm in favor of term limits. I think they should be across the board, from local, state to national.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Mr. Paul.
Yeah, term limits in this day. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter, because when you elect the same people over and over again with the same message, it really doesn't do a thing. And you look at the last 10 years and look who's been representing us, not a lot has changed. All first-year GOP House representative members vote party lines every time. So if you're going to have a 2-year term limit and 6 years max, and the next person that replaces them is the exact same, what does it matter? So yeah, I do support term limits. I do think that maybe state reps, they should move it from a 2 to a 4-year term, simply because by the time you get elected and you get into office and you settle in, you have to start all over again. And it's very hard for policymakers to have their policies come into effect even after they're reelected. So in a 2-year cycle, a policy that we may develop take charge in 2 years, it could be overdone immediately. So we have to look at where term limits are, what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to bring new people, fresh insight, and people that weren't necessarily part of the good old boy system. So that's what we need to stay true to. And now, unfortunately, with the way the campaign financing is, the special interests, pay for these campaigns, and when they get in there, they represent them and not the people. So I think we need to hold true to what the principles of term limits was, and that was to have fresh, intuitive, new young blood in there, someone that can represent your district and not someone that's going to be the same. So I wouldn't support repealing it, just tweaking the campaigning financing maybe a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. I have a question from the audience. How do you differ from your opponent in how to organize our schools? Mr. Perry.
On how to organize our schools?
That's the question.
I don't know. I know some of the differences that I have probably with my opponent, but on organizing schools, I'm not really sure about that question.
Let me editorialize.
Okay.
How do you differ from your opponent in legislation that might affect the school system?
Okay, that's a good question. I'm all about my business. We compete every single day. If we don't do a good job for you, you don't hire us. If we don't do a good job, we don't make any money. We don't employ people. We don't pay taxes. And so my whole gist is my whole life is becoming accountable to my customers, and also accountable to the people who work for my company. And so how do you balance that out? And that's I think is my strength and my skill. When I had 5 offices going 225 people, I was able to had to learn to delegate, manage, make people accountable, and also reward the people that worked hard and created things, use their intellect, use their innovative ideas and changes. And so those are the things that I've learned in 34 years, and we're able to grow a business in that regard on how to delegate and make people accountable. And I think that we have to do that in the educational system. We have great teachers. I went up through the public school system. I had great teachers. I had a couple teachers who weren't so great and just wanted to spend time going to school. So anyway, so my skills, I think, is making people accountable and delegating and rewarding.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Mr. Paul.
Okay, a big difference. Number one, schools are not a business. You cannot run the education system like a business. All right, schools are differentiated. We need to promote more vocational training in our schools. We need to bring more resources available to our students. We need to remove the FCAT at all costs. I can tell you that was a #1 problem in our school. And I hear, well, there's no alternative. Who has an idea besides the FCAT? Well, that's crap. Our teachers and our parents have ideas. We need to restore the local faith in schools. Our local school boards should be handling more of the delegation and not Tallahassee. I don't see how Tallahassee can tell a school in Marion County or Alachua, what's going on specifically to their needs and areas. I would like to diversify our school standards. I think that not every child's going to go to college. I can tell you that as a 12th grade teacher. I had a 30% dropout rate, and the #1 reason was I'm not going to college. I need a job now. So we have to stop that. We need to offer them other functions, other outlets. There's no reason why kids can't explore making solar panels. There's not shop class anymore. Heck, there's not even recess anymore in schools. What happened to recess? Our kids used to have a great time in school and love to go there. Now it's a FCAT drilling machine, and it really puts a lot of pressure on our students. We need to take a step back and look at what we have done and look at where we need to go. We can do so much more for education in this state, and unfortunately I'm the only one here that can provide those insights and that ability to properly legislate our school system in the state of Florida to get it back on the right track.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. I have a question that was prepared by the league that I'm going to throw in at this point. Do you find dealing with growth management, do you find the implementation of growth management satisfactory in Florida? Why or why not? If not, what changes would you propose to better manage growth? We'll start with Mr. Paul.
State of Florida, we're one of the few states in this country that has, our county commissions are required to do a growth management plan. The problem lies is that when we have developers that retain control through land use changes, through backroom deals and et cetera, that's why our faith has been lost in the government. And that's where Amendment 4 is coming from. So I think to restore faith in government, we need somebody that's going to be a participative legislator, meaning someone that's going to be there on the ground when we're not in office. I'll go around. You can ask my wife. I'll ask the state workers that are standing there, what are they doing? So we need to make sure that we have somebody in office like that that can promote values and restore integrity to our politicians. Our county commissioners have a lot. It's a big deal to draw a comprehensive growth management plan for a large area. So we need to support our legislators. We need to elect representatives that are going to do their job. We need to lobby them harder than the lobbyists lobby them. So we need to get our message out there. And if you don't like the way a comprehensive land use plan is drawn, you need to voice your concern with the county commission. I don't think the state legislature should be getting in the business of drawing growth management plans for specific areas. That just becomes overburdensome and bureaucratic. So we have to rely on our local county commissions to do the right job of what they were elected for. We need to support them. The state legislatures need to support them. And citizens especially need to voice their concerns at every county commission meeting, and anywhere they can, and write letters to the paper. That's the best way your voice can get heard, and make sure your growth management is the way you like it in the state.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Mr. Perry.
Well, I'll certainly admit this is not one of my expertises in growth management. Even though I'm in the construction business, most of our stuff is re-roofing buildings and homes, so I don't get into that side of the construction market. I do believe, I live on Bivens Arm Lake, one of the most beautiful places in this whole area right here. My neighbor is the University of Florida IFAS. It's nice to have that. It's nice to have cows as neighbors, and I'm 2 miles from downtown. So I do understand that we live in this area. We certainly want to have that protected, and we want to live in nice neighborhoods with areas. At the same time, we have to balance that with personal property rights. If people own property and we want to use that, or we think that property needs to be conserved, then we need to look at how do we compensate individuals for property that we as a general public want to conserve or save. So there's a big balance in personal property rights versus what we want as society as a whole. I do believe it lies in the hands of the county commission, and that's their role. And for the most part, I think they've done a fairly adequate job. Certainly, nobody's going to be happy with everything, but we do have new people, and we've all moved into new neighborhoods, and those have been developed. And so we have to have, if we're going to have a population that people want to move here, we will have growth. But it just needs to be managed. Again, it's not something that I'm an expert in by any means, but I want to, I'll be learning more about it from the state side. If I'm elected in a few weeks, we'll find out.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. At this time, we're going to close. We're going to have, each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to make their closing statement. And we'll start off with Mr. Perry.
Just want to clarify, too, I'm not against public school systems at all. I'm in favor of those. I've been classified that. Micah 6 in the Old Testament, act justly, seek mercy, walk humbly. That's been what I've wanted to do, and I've written those down while I've been campaigning, and I want to stay that way. I think we live in an incredible area, but we have a lot of issues. We have one of the highest poverty rates in the whole state, right here in Gainesville. And you would think with the University of Florida and all the technology and all the brain power we have that we could do a lot better than that. I mentioned House of Hope as my passion. These men getting out of prison with no place to go. I think we owe it to ourselves that we can do a lot better. Part of my theme in life is that I want to represent what we maybe would call the invisible. Not the people who stand out, not the people with all the money, not the people with all the power, but what about all the other people that live in our state, live in our community, that are the invisible? So that's why I mentioned House of Hope as a passion of mine. That's just who I am, and that's the basis for what I am. But those are my things: act justly, seek mercy, walk humbly, and that's what I'm going to try to do now. I've tried to do it through the campaign, through my whole life, and that's certainly what I'll do if I'm elected as your state representative.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Mr. Paul.
Yeah, thank you all again for having me. Basically, you look at experience. I'm college educated. I have a 4.0 in my master's in public administration. I'm a former teacher. I was a carpenter. I managed a construction crew all through college. I currently manage a law firm. So I have both the legal, educational, and business experience to be your next legislature. I believe in our public education system. It has problems, but it needs to be fixed. And I think we need someone with a good head on their shoulders and knows how to run education like education and not like a business. I also believe that, as the citizens of the state of Florida, we need clean jobs. Jobs are the quintessential recovery agent for the state of Florida. We can do that through improved energy solutions. Our government buildings should be re-energized so they produce or consume less energy. As the state of Florida, we use 90% of our electricity is burned from oil, and that is unacceptable. As the Sunshine State, there's no reason why we shouldn't have solar, wind, biomass, plasma gasification. We need to turn things like our trash into a commodity. It's sitting there in ruin, and we've got lots of it, folks. We can turn it into a viable, clean energy source, put our employers back to work, and get Florida back on the right track to economic recovery and provide a better educational system for us all and our children. Thank you. I'm John Paul, District 22.
Ladies and gentlemen, this ends the panel for discussion for House District 22. I want to thank the candidates for coming out on this beautiful sunny Sunday afternoon. And in a minute here, we'll start up with the next panel.
Good job.
You have a very compelling story.
Thank you for doing this.
We'll be getting started in just a few minutes. We're a couple minutes ahead of time. So we'll start in just a few minutes.